Hey everybody, welcome to Driving Cheap with Jeff. On today's video, I'm going to show you some of the benefits of driving a retired police Charger and some of the things that you need to look for when buying, or at least what to expect. Now the great thing about them is these cars can be had really cheap. That's the beauty of it. And if you're good at working on stuff, or even okay at working on stuff, a car like this could really benefit you to put in your fleet. I use this one to drive back and forth to work, and believe it or not, I paid $400 for this car 2 years ago. So it was 7 years old when I bought it with 130,000 miles on it. And it wasn't an accident, a minor accident, and I was able to find matching colored parts at my local salvage yard. And I replaced this fender and this door, and they matched perfectly because they came from another car. The suspension was damaged. It was sideswiped at a traffic stop. An 18-wheeler blew a tire, and it took off the driver's side of the car. It damaged the front. All this is from another car or brand new. And there was no structural damage done whatsoever. I had the alignment done afterwards. They said it was perfect. Everything was good. When you buy these cars, quite often, they come with something everybody likes to see. You get the window sticker. It shows you all the cool options that you get. I'm not going to read them to you because I want to show you some stuff. I don't want to take up your time, but I can at least show you to where you could see what kind of great features you get with these cars. All right, and I'm going to show you one thing I like to do is I'll buy 2 or 3 of these cars if I can, because these are pretty cheap, and I will figure out how much time and money. I use these little folders and I write down everything I do. I keep track of all my miles on my cars, everything I do, every hour I spend on the car every hour I spend on a car that I eventually plan on selling or using. And this car, it met the criteria. I like to drive $400 cars. That's something that I've done for years. I've always driven cars. $400 is the magic number. I'll drive them for years anyway. Now, I'm going to show you the interior. Come around here. Okay, I'm going to show you the inside of this car. Now, I've done some modifications to it. This car did have carpet, our local. I work in tight quarters, which is fine. I get stuff done. If you look in here, the driver's seat, this was a K9 unit, so I did replace the seat cushions. I put the fold down back seat from a regular Charger. This had carpet. I put vinyl flooring from a newer police Charger. I love these center consoles. These have this center consoles. You can adjust them. They come with lots of auxiliary power outlets. They have a USB port on the passenger side. You have all the stuff you get in a regular SXT Charger. You get all that stuff. I put an LED spotlight in from another police car. This did not have the spotlight. Moving on to the back. I'm going to keep it moving. You do have the automatic gas fill release. This is, actually, move this out of here. At the back seat, look at everything. I even put these pockets in here. They do not come with the pockets because they put a cage in here. When you buy these, you have to take the cage out, typically. You have the fold down back seat, which is what I put in from a regular Charger. Cleaned everything up nice. I cleaned the, pause it, 30,000 miles on these hoses, and that is when they are due to be replaced. When you order new ones, they come with all the clamps and everything ready to go. You can get these on eBay pretty cheap. You can't go to your local auto parts store to get these hoses because you cannot get them with the oil cooler outlet, and you need a separate hose for the engine oil cooler. So these 2 hoses can only be had online. I like to use, sometimes I will use the silicone hose, which lasts forever. If I can find the proper fittings, I will use these in place of the heater hoses. On this particular car, when I bought it, I was excited to get it on the road, so I just ordered on eBay both of the new heater core hoses that are on the back of the motor. Since I have the transmission out, I decided to put a new center support bearing. Had a little funny noise. I thought it might have been worn out. And I knew because the car had so many hours on it that it would be worn out. And I got this, it was not very expensive, about $70 at O'Reilly Auto Parts. And there's a big difference. This one here is pretty cracked up and kind of wonky. The bearings a little, you know, it's one of those things. It's dry rotted. You can see the rubber's a little dry from, you know, it gets hot under there. Has a heat shield, but it's still not fully protected. The U-joint, I actually brought this drive shaft to a transmission shop, and a friend of mine told me that it is perfectly normal if they have a little bit, because these are pinned. They're called pinned drive shafts, so they're not. He said this one is still good, and I decided to reuse it. These the transmission and rear end have rubber bushings. I'm not kind of undecided. I may replace those. I know these particular police vehicles, every 50,000 miles, these cooling fans are automatically replaced, because I've had it happen on my Magnum. These the fan blades will break off when they get a little old. So the police department's remedy for this problem is they just replace them. They just go and change them out. They're really easy, and it saves your radiator, saves your motor from overheating. So these typically, this one's been replaced. This is the original Chrysler starter, which still looks good. I'm gonna put it right back in there. Scotty Kilmer said he suggested that you wash out these catalytic converters. I used a trash can with laundry soap, and it actually, I think it did clean it up a little bit. So you can get it out here. You can see inside, everything looks pretty good. It looks good in there. It's like, I mean, it's kind of hard to tell, but this one looks good. I have replaced these with MagnaFlows. They're over $500. These are still good, so I'm going to leave it alone. I did not go cheap on the rear main seal. I went to the Dodge dealer, and I bought this. It was under $100, and it has the seal in the back here that runs around. And the oil pan is not leaking, so the guys just told me what I figured. Just clean it up with some alcohol, and just use black RTV when you put this back down. And on a later video, I'm going to show that, like, this rear main seal has 12,000 hours, almost 12,000 hours on it, and I'm going to use to demonstrate the benefits of this AT205 reseal stop leak, which is amazing stuff. I used it on my Silverado with 252,000 miles, and I recommended it to two of my friends that have the same truck, and it remedied their problem. Now that's going to fix, or that may help soften up this seal, and we're going to try that in a container on a later video, where we're going to soak this in ATP reseal. I just have to get some more of it, and but it's not going to remedy a problem like this here, where you have a gasket, where you may have a paper gasket on this piece right here. So I mean, it'll probably fix some of your leak, if not most of it, but it definitely helps. We have anytime I go to the salvage yard, I like to get these. Anytime you have to take these cars apart, just get as many of these little push pins as you can. Some of these are not the right size. I only use the right size pins, but they're expensive and they sell them in small quantities. Best to just go to the salvage yard. I get nuts and bolts. Anytime I take something apart in the junkyard, for everything in these boxes are in my toolbox, and I collect them. So if I lose a bolt, or sometimes in the upfitting process of these cars, they leave bolts out, and I can't stand that. Fasteners, things like that. Stuff like this can be missing. You know, it's not uncommon to find stuff cracked or missing. So it's a good idea just to have extra stuff. These little push pins, like, you need a lot of these, and they get broken sometimes when you take them off. It's a good idea to have extra stuff like that. I buy these cheap switches for fog lights and things, accessories, and I either hook it to constant power or ignition power. Like, you can do that in the console, not hard to do. I will tell you that, oh, I left that out. These cars do, typically they come with about 3 or 4 keys, and these have the, all you have to have is your key in your pocket. The previous body style Chargers had a, I had an issue with the car would not come out of park. And my friend noticed that the brake lights were not working when I stepped on the brake. And it turned out there was a transmission fuse in the trunk. And when I replaced that, the car came out of park and my brake lights began to work. I don't see the same fuse in these newer body style Chargers, but just keep that in mind if you ever have that problem where the car will not come out of park. Just look into the fuse thing. There's nothing in the trunk like the old one. There's no fuse for the transmission in the trunk, but just keep that in mind if you ever can't get your car out of park. I have not had that problem with this body style Charger. One of the first things I like to do on these police Chargers when I bring them home is I like to remove the covers on the fuel tanks and pump out all the fuel that's been sitting in the tank. Typically these cars have been sitting for months before they go to surplus. I like to get the fuel out, and I like to use my electric transfer pump or a hand pump to get the fuel into cans. I then wipe the inside of the tanks clean and inspect my fuel pumps. I'm going to show you the location of the fuel pumps on these Chargers. They're the same as the older Dodge Chargers, Chrysler 300s, or Magnums. So, tight in here. I've removed the back seat so you can see the location. I did not remove the covers, but they're located under here. They're really easy to remove. You just pop these covers off and they sit directly under here. These have Airtex pumps. I put new ones in this car. Now, Airtex is the aftermarket company. Under that cover over there, on the passenger side, that's your main fuel pump over here. This is a scavenger pump on this side. The dealership recommends you replace them as a set. I like to do the same, but if one looks aftermarket and the other one doesn't, I'll change the one that I think is the culprit. Slide over here. After I drain, one of the things that I look for, I have a set of fuel pumps here. Now, anytime you remove these covers, it's a good idea, if your O-rings don't look nice and plump, to replace these. They're kind of expensive, but you can get this on eBay with this part number relatively cheap. A lot cheaper than you can anywhere else. And it works great. I like to keep spares of these from the junkyard on the passenger side. This coupling can be really hard to get out, and it's really easy to damage this. So it's a good idea to have an extra one handy. This just pops into here, and this is what locks this all in place. This is what a OEM fuel pump looks like. This came out of my wife's Magnum. I replaced both these fuel pumps just because the car at the time had 130,000 miles, and I thought it was a good time to replace them. This is the one on the driver's side. This pump here is the factory pump from the passenger side. And this just snakes through. All this here has a float on either side. I inspect under the fuel pump. Sometimes these get really corroded. Right, like this whole area will get oxidized from the ethanol gas. This car was used really, really regular and never sat, so it stayed pretty clean, and I always put additives inside the tank. These pumps are still good, so I kept them as spares for troubleshooting purposes. This is what an aftermarket fuel pump. This is a CarQuest brand, and you can see the decal on here. Many of the auto parts stores, they have their own brand fuel pumps. I don't like the cheaper ones. I'm afraid to use the cheaper fuel pumps. I use the Bosch and the Delphi. I bought a Bosch and Delphi for my Magnum when I got new ones because I really needed them. I really needed them to be reliable. I bought them from Napa before, and they've been loud. It's just hit or miss, it really is with these pumps. I've seen the precision fuel pumps in these cars when I bought them from the police auctions. Those come from O'Reilly Auto Parts. I think when the pumps go bad, they pretty much go wherever they can find the pump, and that's what they use. But they're really easy to change. It's easier when you drain pump the fuel down. But all this stuff here just hooks over into the, it just really hooks over into the side here. You have some intake ports on this side, correction, outtake ports over here where these just snap onto, and you just have these little compression rings. And you can press this in, and it will release it. So it locks when you let go, and you press it in. That's all you have to do. Take a flathead screwdriver, something, press that in and pull up on it. The other ones, they simply just set in here. That's all it is. They just set in here, like so. They just snap in. It makes it really easy. The other one, it had another spot where it sat right, yeah. On the, actually these go on the other side. I'm looking at it wrong. It's really easy to change these things. This goes here, this goes here, and this right here just snaps on top of here, like so. Clicks right on. Plug this into the bottom. It just goes right up in here. And the car has its own plug that goes right here. It's really easy. You just plug that in there. Or no, I'm sorry. It's right here. You just hook this in. This attaches like so. Flip this around. I just have to flip around. Then you want to have it all. And this just slides in here. And when you press this down in, it makes it so it can just, it presses against the floor of the tank, and there's a ring that locks over this, and the O-ring sits underneath here in this lip right here. It's not hard to do. You just want to get a good seal. Maybe put a little Vaseline on this seal to make sure it's good. And like you'll need 2 of these, one for either side. And that's pretty much it. Like I said, I like to fill, it takes me a while to get one of these cars done typically, so I like to fill them up with marine fuel and put stable in the tank so I have no more fuel problems. I like to make sure that I'm on. When you replace the headlights on a Dodge Charger, make sure that you take the backing off. When you buy the aftermarket headlights, you put silicone on the back side to double seal this. You want to double seal when you have it off, and the same with the fog lights. Put a little bead of that clear the clear silicone. It'll prevent any moisture from getting in there. And really, if you can, try to find a good set of used original headlights. They're better than the aftermarkets. They really are. You'll never have any trouble with originals, but the aftermarkets, you do have to work to kind of seal them up. It's a little aggravating, but they work great. For about $200, you can have the headlights and fog lights. They come with bolts and everything. And yeah, just really make sure you really put an effort into trying to seal them up, because they're aggravating. You have to take the bumper off, take the headlights out. Just keep that in mind. Do a good job. That's what. And once you get over 100,000 miles, you're not really focusing on the mileage as much. I've looked at large groups of these cars, and sometimes the lower mileage cars run worse than the higher mileage cars. I mean, I looked at one that was run by that was driven by the school resource officer, and it was a beautiful car, but it did not run well. I ended up buying the most highest mileage car out of the group because it ran the best. And when I first started it up, when I got there, it hadn't been run in weeks. And I quickly smelled the exhaust, no oil burn, engine ran nice and smooth. I said, that is the car for me. So I took that out of the group, and I bought another one that needed engine work for really cheap. They're just a no-brainer, really. I'll show you. Let me show you what the interior of this car looks like. All right. So I put the vinyl floor in here, and believe it or not, once I cleaned this thing out, I threw away the rear package tray. It had dog hair. There was a lot of dog hair. This car didn't even have a back seat. It was set up for the dog to ride. It had a tube that ran from the dashboard into the back through the partition, so the dog could have good air conditioning. And it was a big dog road in this car. There was a lot of hair everywhere, and the plastic trim was worn out. And you have to overlook that. When you pay $400 for a car that's 7 years old, you really have to overlook a lot of that stuff. And stuff is just going to be worn. Your steering wheel. I bought another steering wheel for it. These seats were from another police car. Headliner. I'll get in there. I'll take the whole interior out, scrub the interior on a nice hot day, get everything all nice and clean, let it dry. Everything in this car works on the interior. So one of the things that you know, the clock springs wear out. The clock spring inside the steering wheel, they do wear out, and they will cause your airbag light to come on. Police officers make lots of turns. They drive through neighborhoods. They're turning around a lot, probably more than most. So that's something that you'll probably end up needing to replace down the road. Stuff like the armrest. I think this whole door came from another car. This door cost me more than the car did. I paid almost $600 for this door. Came off of another car that was exactly the same. Same with this fender. Came off of another car. So I didn't even have to paint it. Everything is used, so you can't tell it's been wrecked. Frame was in great shape. I took it head out of line. Once I replaced the front end parts, they said there's nothing wrong with the alignment. So this car really, it took a really, it was hit, but it didn't damage anything. I mean, there's nothing structural. It was all cosmetic. This back bumper came off another car. When they did it, when they peeled the stickers off, you know, they used an eraser wheel, and they messed the paint up really bad. So I found these chrome tips. They always take these off. The newer ones don't even have them because they catch on curbs and stuff. So the first thing the police departments do is they yank them off and they throw them away. Well, these chrome tips are really expensive, so it's cheaper just to get a whole bumper. And if you can, because you can't just go out and buy these chrome tips. They cost too much. What I like to do, I don't have a lot of space, so I put stuff in the trunk. Try to keep everything as tidy as I can. One of the other things I found, that when you buy these cars, a lot of them are going to have evap problems, or they're going to get evap problems. So what I found, and I always end up replacing, and when you get them, you want to put it on right away. You don't want to take the old one off, because you could put this on wrong. There it is up in here. Let's see what we have. Got my phone. I'm kind of new at this GoPro stuff. We look up in here, and you will notice there is, if I get my better lighting, this is in the passenger side rear wheel well. There is an evap valve in here. When you shut the car off, it pretty much shuts the evap system down. And there's a little, let me see if I have one in my toolbox over. How would I have one sitting in my toolbox? I like to keep everything inside. Do I have one in here? No, I don't know what I did with it. But I could show you that later. But there is something that just twists on. Like, you really don't even need tools. It just twists up in here. You pop the hose off, twist it in, and but you don't want to put it on backwards because you'll get the evap problem back. On the roof, you'll have, hey, you buy these little plastic caps, you pop them in. I've done different things to fill the holes on these cars. I've seen where some people will take some strong automotive adhesive and a piece of metal and a screw, and you just pull a piece of metal up into the roof of the car and then bond it over the top of that and paint it, which is probably the best way to do it. I've tapped the holes down and filled them with fiberglass. That's really hard to do. I think I've done video. I have a video on that too. These brakes, man, they come with massive brakes, front and rear. They're almost 15 inches in diameter. Things are huge. About to replace the pads on these. This car, believe it or not, came with new brakes, new front brakes. Now, the other thing, which was, the front struts are really expensive. They're $500 for a set. You can't buy quick struts for these. You have to get the regular Monroe struts that come on the police cars. And you can put other kind of struts on. They do work. All this stuff under here. All this stuff under here, because the springs are so stiff, all these bushings get beat to death. So these rubber bushings that go inside all this stuff, especially this arm right under here, this control arm, they always get worn out. And then for the front control arm, that wears out. And they can be kind of expensive. This car, the links were bent from the accident, and I had to replace both of the links. I did put new tie rod ends on it. And oh yeah, the other thing too, when you're any kind of transmission issues, you want to make sure on these cars, I have the transmission out of this one, and it wasn't hard to take out. It really wasn't. I mean, you could use your 3/8 inch wrench, and you don't even need extensions. You could just reach up. You can literally reach up in between the engine and transmission, and you can get to all the bolts. They have nuts that hold brackets and ground wires and things on. Take that little bracket off, and then go in there with a deep well. 14, 15, and 16 millimeter, pop the thing, unscrew them right out. I used my, the cheap Harbor Freight transmission jack. It worked great. You have to use these big jack stands because you need to get the car up as high as you can just to fit the transmission out from inside the wheel. You need to turn the wheels all the way to the right just to make the thing fit. Just to make it fit in and out of there. I'm probably gonna put some new insulation up under there too. That's all worn out. But one thing that you need to look at when you need to be really careful with this wire, the wiring going to the transmission, because the plastic insulation on it gets stiff, and you don't want to bend it too much because you could crack the wires inside. So you really need to take care of that. And maybe possibly put some of that nice heat tape over the top of it just to protect it so the wiring doesn't melt any more than it has to. The lower radiator hose right here, this is expensive. The last time I bought one of these, I had to go to the dealer. It has a little elbow here. And this one needs to be replaced now. I'm going to replace this. I already replaced the heater hoses. The hoses going to the heater core. I've changed those back when I bought the car because they look kind of bad. But pretty much, I mean, they don't really leak. I mean, I think age is harder on a car than mileage in some cases. The undercarriage is going to be scuffed up. I mean, they drive over curbs and they go over things. The jacking points in the back, they're almost always missing. The little plastic knobs that you would put a lift, like when you go to lift the car. But I don't mind that because I like to just put the jack stand right on the body of the car, on those little solid corners. This is how I like to jack the car up, just like that, and gets it nice and sturdy. Always do the shake test. And it could take a little while to get the thing jacked up. This one's not too bad underneath, but they do get scuffed up because they drive over stuff. But they take really good care of them. I know the guys in my town that take great care of these cars. They cost so much money when they buy it, the initial cost, and they have to upfit all the electronics into the car. Let's see here. The water pump's been replaced. Most of these cars, if you have a 2011, it'll have a new 2014 is about when they put timing chains in them under recall. You have this gigantic alternator, and it's great when you get one of these and you find out they have a bunch of recalls to get new parts. I love that. They have, the older models had a different evap canister. One thing I like to do is I like to go through and check all the wiring. Anywhere there's wires, I just inspect it, and I'll put new insulation, a wire conduit over the top of them. I just like to make sure everything's good. They have 16 spark plugs. You take every other plug out. I like to compression test them. Cold, these things run 185 PSI in each cylinder. That's what they hold. That's what this one held. This one does not have Hemi tick. Some of your older Hemis made a little tick when they'd idle. This one doesn't do it. Actually, most of the ones I've had have not had the Hemi tick. I have taken these spotlights off, and I've just put fiberglass and smoothed them out, gone in the back of it. I kind of like the look of them. They are a blind spot. These spotlights can be a blind spot. I'm tall, so it's not as big of a deal, but they do create a blind spot. I think if I had a teenager, I mean, if my kids were teenagers, I would remove the spotlight just so they would be able to see cars in a roundabout. Stuff like the windshield is going to be worn out. It's going to have lots of chips because they just drive a lot in a short period of time. That's what it is. They're driving the car a lot more than you would. Instead of 20,000 miles a year, these cars are getting 30,000 miles a year. Everything's been taken apart more than on a civilian version. Let's see here. Batteries in the trunk. When you pull the the power steering. Let me show you the power steering on these things. I have the wheel turned all the way to the right, of course, but I can take this and I can turn it without the keys in the ignition. It's pretty good. See if I can push this back around. I will show you what we're talking about inside here. This is your power steering right here behind this little rubber hatch. This comes right out. This will actually just, it pops right out. You just take the wheel off and the fender, and it takes a specific fluid. And when you see these cars listed as power steering inoperable, that's because they just get low on fluid because the O-rings wear out. And they're easy to change. That cover comes off, put a new O-ring on it. And the gearbox, the little gearbox splits in the middle. They're expensive to replace. You always want to, yeah, I mean, that's a Dorman kit. Comes with a new reservoir, O-rings. Both of mine, the power steering didn't work. They sat for a long time before I got them. And I just took that out and put new O-rings in it. Flush the system with some new fluid. And it takes a specific fluid, which is pretty interesting. Let me show you. This is pretty much the only stuff you can put in there. This, oh, here it is right here. This is it. Make sure we have plenty of light. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, hit the like button, and if you haven't already, please subscribe so we can keep posting new videos.